You are listening to Sleepy Facts. Tonight, we explore the quiet story of a name. Names travel through centuries, through languages, through cultures and generations. Some names were spoken by kings and explorers. Others were whispered in small homes and quiet villages. But every name carries a story. Tonight, we gently follow the journey of one name through time. And if you would like to hear the story of your own name, you are welcome to write it in the comments. Perhaps its quiet history will become one of our future stories. Now take a slow breath, relax your mind, and let this peaceful story begin. In the beginning, there was a word, not yet a name, but simply a meaning, a description of something people valued and admired. In the ancient Greek language, spoken thousands of years ago in lands warmed by the Mediterranean sun, there were two small words that, when joined together, created something powerful yet gentle. Aleksandr, meaning to defend, to protect, to ward away harm, and Anna, meaning man or person. Together, these two syllables formed Aleksandr, the defender of people, the protector, a name that carried within it the quiet promise of safety and strength. This name was not born in grand palaces or carved into monuments at first. It lived in the everyday speech of ancient Greek communities, where parents would look at their newborn sons and choose a name that spoke of their hopes. They wanted their children to be strong, yes, but not cruel, to be protective, not aggressive. The name Alexander whispered of guardianship, of someone who would stand between danger and those who needed shelter. It was a name of gentle strength, and it resonated in the hearts of families across the Greek-speaking world. The syllables themselves are soft when spoken slowly. Aleksandr. 4 gentle beats, like a calm heartbeat. The name rolls off the tongue with a rhythm that feels both ancient and familiar, as if it has always existed somewhere in the collective memory of humanity. In those early days, before the name became famous, before it traveled across continents, it was simply a hope spoken aloud by mothers and fathers in quiet rooms, holding their infants close. As centuries passed in the ancient world, the name Aleksandr began to appear more frequently. It was given to boys born into various walks of life: farmers, merchants, scholars, and eventually nobility. The name carried no burden then, no weight of expectation beyond the simple wish that this child might grow to be someone who protects and defends. In the warm Greek evenings, under olive trees and beside the gentle Mediterranean waves, children named Aleksandr played and grew, unaware that their name would one day echo through history. In the kingdom of Macedon, in the northern regions of the Greek world, the name Aleksandr was chosen for a prince born in the year 356 before the Common Era. This child would grow to be known across the ancient world. But that is not the focus of our quiet story tonight. What matters is that this one person, carrying the name Aleksandr, would set the name on a journey across the earth that continues even now, thousands of years later. The name traveled with armies, yes, but it also traveled with merchants and teachers, with stories and songs, spreading gently like seeds carried on the wind. After this famous Aleksandr, the name became treasured across many lands. Parents in Egypt named their sons Alexander. Families in Persia, in distant Bactria, in the lands that would become Syria and Turkey and beyond, they all adopted this name. It became a way of honoring memory, but also a way of expressing that same ancient hope, that this child might be a protector, a defender of others, The name had begun its slow, peaceful migration across the ancient world. In Egypt, the name took on a particular reverence. In the great city of Alexandria, founded on the Mediterranean coast, the name echoed through marble halls and busy marketplaces. Egyptian children were given the name Alexandros in Greek, but in the local Coptic language, it transformed slightly, adapting to new tongues and new sounds. The name was no longer exclusively Greek. It belonged now to many peoples, many cultures, each one pronouncing it in their own way, each one adding their own gentle accent to its syllables. As the centuries continued their slow turn, the Roman Empire spread across the known world, and the name Alexander traveled with it. The Romans, who spoke Latin, adapted the Greek name into their own linguistic patterns, but they kept it remarkably similar. Alexandrus, they called it informal Latin, though in everyday speech it remained close to its Greek roots. Roman boys named Alexander grew up in villas in Italy, in outposts in Gaul, in the cities of Hispania and Britannia. The name crossed into new territories, always carried by people, always spoken with the quiet hope that this name might shape a gentle strength in the child who bore it. In the eastern reaches of the ancient world, where Greek culture had mingled with Persian, Indian, and Central Asian traditions, the name continued to adapt and transform. In the Aramaic language, spoken across much of the Near East, it became Alexandros or Iskandar, with softer consonants and a rhythm that fit the flow of Semitic speech. Centuries later, when Arabic became the dominant language of these regions, the name transformed again into Iskandar, a version that would be carried across the Islamic world, from North Africa to Indonesia, from Persia to the edges of the Sahara. In each place, in each language, the name was received like a gift and shaped to fit the mouths of those who spoke it. The core remained, those sounds that suggested protection and humanity. But the exact pronunciation would shift, like water taking the shape of whatever vessel held it. This is the nature of names as they travel. They are not rigid or unchanging. They are living things, adapted by each generation, by each culture, to sound like home. As the Roman Empire slowly gave way to new kingdoms and the medieval world emerged, the name Alexander found new life in Christian communities. Early Christians, seeking names with historical weight and positive meanings, embraced Alexander. Several early Christian saints bore the name, and it became associated not just with worldly protection, but with spiritual guardianship. In the quiet monasteries of medieval Europe, where monks copied texts by candlelight and prayed in the early morning hours, the name Alexander appeared in sacred writings and in the simple records of births and baptisms. During the medieval period, the name spread throughout Christian Europe in various forms. In different regions, it transformed to match local languages and customs. The medieval world was a tapestry of languages and dialects, each region developing its own way of speaking, its own sounds and rhythms. As the name Alexander moved through this diverse landscape, it was reshaped by each community that adopted it, like a river taking on the character of the land through which it flows. In Scotland and Ireland, where Gaelic was spoken, the name became Alasdair, pronounced with a soft lilt that fit the musical quality of Celtic languages. The transformation was gradual, shaped by the way Gaelic speakers heard and reproduced foreign sounds. The hard X of Alexander softened. The ending changed to suit Gaelic pronunciation patterns, And what emerged was a name that sounded native to the Scottish Highlands and the green hills of Ireland. Scottish children named Alasdair grew up in the Highland valleys, in coastal villages, carrying a name that had travelled all the way from ancient Greece through countless transformations, yet still meant defender of people in its ancient heart. In these Celtic lands, the name carried particular resonance. The Scottish clans valued protection and defence, loyalty and strength. A name meaning defender of people fit perfectly with their cultural values. Boys named Alasdair learned to tend sheep on misty hillsides, to fish in cold northern waters, to help their families through harsh winters and brief, beautiful summers. The name was spoken with a rolling R and a soft ending, a sound that felt at home among Gaelic songs and ancient poetry. In medieval England, the name appeared in various forms, sometimes as Alexander in its Latin form, sometimes adapted to fit Middle English pronunciation. Parish records from the 1200s and 1300s show the name appearing with increasing frequency, given to children in rural villages and growing towns alike. An English Alexander might grow up learning his father's trade, perhaps working leather, or forging iron, or tilling fields. His name would be called across medieval market squares, written in parish ledgers, spoken in prayers. The name carried dignity and history even then, though most who bore it lived simple, quiet lives, far from the courts of kings. In Slavic lands, the name took on new forms that reflected the structure of Slavic languages. In Russia, it became Alexander, with a strong emphasis on the first syllable and a softened ending. The Russian language gave the name a particular character, solid and substantial, yet capable of great tenderness when shortened to its diminutive forms. Russian families, from the cold northern forests to the warmer southern steppes, gave this name to their sons. It was a name carried by peasants and nobles alike, by merchants and monks, by everyone who hoped their child might grow to be strong yet kind, protective yet gentle. The name fit well in Russian, where it could be shortened to Sasha, a diminutive form that was tender and affectionate, used between family members in quiet moments. The transformation from Alexander to Sasha is one of the most dramatic shortenings of any name, yet it feels natural in Russian, where diminutives are used to express warmth and closeness. A mother might call her young son Sasha as she tucks him into bed, the name carrying all her love in those two soft syllables. A grandmother might use Sashenka, an even more affectionate form, as she tells stories by the fire on long winter nights. In Russian culture, the name Alexander carried particular weight. It was the name of Nevsky, the medieval prince who defended Russian lands and later became a saint. It was a name given to tsars and to peasant children born in wooden houses in remote villages. The name connected high and low, creating a thread that ran through all levels of society. In the vast Russian landscape, where winters stretched long and quiet, where villages might be separated by miles of forest or steppe, the name Alexander was spoken in countless homes, a constant presence across that enormous territory. In the Russian Orthodox tradition, when a child was baptized Alexander, he was given not just a name, but a patron saint, Saint Alexander Nevsky, whose feast day was celebrated, whose life offered a model of courage and faith. This added a spiritual dimension to the name, connecting each new Alexander to a sacred history, to a story of protection and defense that transcended the merely personal. In Poland, the name became Aleksandr, pronounced with the particular accent and rhythm of Polish. In Czech lands, Alexander. Each Slavic language shaped the name slightly differently, but all preserved its essential character. A Polish Alexander growing up in a medieval town might learn to work wood or stone, might marry and have children to whom he might give other traditional names, continuing the chain of naming that connected generation to generation. His name would be recorded in church records, spoken at his wedding, carved perhaps on his gravestone, and then remembered by his children and grandchildren, before gradually fading into the general past from which all families emerge and into which they eventually return. In Poland, the name became Alexander. In Czech lands, Alexander. In Hungary, where a different language family prevailed, it was adapted to Sándor, a form that sounds distinctly Hungarian, but carries the same ancient meaning. Each variation was shaped by the specific sounds that felt natural in that language, by the patterns of speech that children learned from their parents, by the gentle customs of naming that varied from place to place, but always served the same purpose: to give a child an identity, a sound that would be called out across fields or whispered in quiet rooms, a name that would be theirs for all their days. In Italy, where Latin had evolved into melodious Italian, the name remained Alessandro, close to its Latin form, but with the warm, open vowels of Italian, giving it a musical quality. Italian parents choosing the name Alessandro for their sons in Renaissance Florence or medieval Naples or the quiet villages of Tuscany were participating in an unbroken tradition reaching back to ancient Rome. The name rolled off Italian tongues with a gentle rhythm, 4 syllables, each one clear and melodious, the double airs giving it a softness, the O ending typical of Italian masculine names. In the warm Italian evenings, in stone houses with terracotta roofs, mothers would call Alessandro, and boys would come running from the streets or the fields. The name fit perfectly with other Italian names of the time. It belonged among the Lorenzos and Marcos, the Giovannis and Matteos. An Italian Alessandro might grow up learning to press olives, to tend grapevines, to work stone or paint frescoes. The Renaissance period saw many Alessandros, from artists to merchants, each one carrying a name that connected them to classical antiquity, to the Roman past that Italians held in particular reverence. In Spain and Portugal, the name transformed to match the sounds and patterns of Iberian Romance languages. In Spain, it became Alejandro, the J pronounced with the throaty sound characteristic of Spanish, giving the name a warmth and strength. In Portugal, it became Aleksandr, with the nasal vowels and soft consonants of Portuguese creating a gentler sound. Children named Alejandro grew up in whitewashed villages in Andalusia, in mountain towns in the Pyrenees, in coastal cities along the Mediterranean. The name was as at home in Spanish as it had been in Greek, 2,000 years apart, shaped by the evolution of language, but still recognizable as the same name. Spanish families in the medieval period, during the complex centuries of Christian and Islamic kingdoms, sharing the Iberian Peninsula, gave the name Alejandro to their sons as a marker of Christian identity and classical heritage. The name carried echoes of ancient learning, of the classical world that medieval scholars sought to preserve and understand. A Spanish Alejandro in the 1300s might grow up speaking both Castilian and Arabic, might trade in markets where multiple languages were spoken, might see his name written in Gothic script in Christian documents and hear similar sounding names. Iskandar in the Arabic speech of his Muslim neighbors. In Portugal, Aleksandr was given to boys born in fishing villages along the Atlantic coast, in inland farming communities, in the growing cities of Lisbon and Porto. The Portuguese language gave the name its own particular sound, softer than Spanish, more nasal, with the final E pronounced as a schwa, creating a gentle ending. A Portuguese, Alexandre, might grow up to sail on the great voyages of discovery, might carry his name to Brazil or Africa or India, contributing to the global spread of European names that would come to characterize the age of exploration. In France, the name transformed into Alexandre, pronounced with the nasal vowels and gentle consonants of French. The French language, with its tendency to nasalize vowels and soften final consonants, gave the name a refined quality. French families, whether in the countryside of Provence, or the northern regions of Normandy, or the growing city of Paris, gave this name to their children. It was a name that appeared in parish registers, in family Bibles, in the quiet documentation of everyday life that marked births, baptisms, marriages, and deaths. French Alexandres grew up in a culture that valued both classical learning and Christian tradition. The name connected them to both, to ancient Greece through its etymology, to Christianity through various saints who had borne it. A French Alexandre in medieval times might become a monk, copying manuscripts in a monastery scriptorium, his name written in beautiful script alongside the sacred texts he preserved. Or he might be a farmer, working land that had been in his family for generations. His name called across fields at harvest time, simple and unremarkable in his own time, but part of the vast multitude who carried the name through history. In Germanic languages, the name took forms like Alexander in German, where it was pronounced with a harder emphasis, fitting the patterns of German speech. In the Netherlands, it became Alexander, or the shorter form, Sander. In Scandinavian countries, it remained Alexander in writing, but was pronounced with a particular accent of Swedish, Norwegian, or Danish. Children named Alexander grew up in fjordside villages in Norway, in the forests of Sweden, in the flat landscapes of Denmark, each one carrying a name that had traveled so far from its Mediterranean origins. As European explorers and settlers spread across the world in later centuries, they carried their names with them. The name Alexander traveled to the Americas, to Australia, to distant islands, to every corner of the globe where European languages took root. In each place, it was adapted once more, taking on the accent of American English in the United States, of Brazilian Portuguese in Brazil, of Australian English in Australia. The name became truly global, no longer belonging to one culture or one language, but shared among hundreds of cultures, each pronouncing it in their own way. In some places, the name merged with local traditions and created entirely new forms. In Ireland, the Gaelic Alasdair became anglicised back to Alexander when English became dominant, creating a name that had travelled from Greek to Gaelic and back to English across more than 2,000 years. In Scotland, both Alexander and Alasdair continued to be used, sometimes in the same family, one in formal contexts and one in informal settings. The name became layered with history, with each form representing a different chapter of its long journey. Throughout all these transformations, throughout all these centuries and cultures, certain things remained constant. The name was almost always given to boys, though in modern times, some cultures have begun to use feminine forms like Alexandra, Alessandra, or Alexandria. The name continued to carry connotations of strength and protection, even in places where the original Greek meaning was no longer widely known. Parents choosing the name Alexander, in whatever form, felt instinctively that it was a strong name, a name with history and weight, even if they could not trace that history back to ancient Greece. The name also accumulated famous bearers throughout history, people who carried it into prominence in various fields and eras. Beyond the ancient conqueror, there were Alexander the scientists and inventors, the artists and writers, the saints and scholars. In Russia, Alexander Pushkin wrote poetry that captured the soul of his nation. In Scotland, Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone. In America, Alexander Hamilton helped shape a new nation. Each of these individuals added their own story to the name, but they did not define it. The name remained larger than any single person, belonging to all who bore it, from the famous to the completely unknown. For every famous Alexander, there were thousands upon thousands who lived quiet lives. There were Alexanders who farmed fields in medieval England, who worked as blacksmiths in Renaissance Italy, who sailed on merchant ships in the age of exploration. There were Alexanders who tended sheep in the Russian countryside, Alexandros who kept shops in Greek villages, Iskandars who traded in the markets of Damascus or Cairo or Isfahan. Each one lived a life, experienced joys and sorrows, loved and lost, worked and rested, and then passed the name on to the next generation, or let it rest with them. These quiet bearers of the name are the true story of Alexander, not the famous few, but the countless many who carried it through ordinary days and peaceful nights. In modern times, the name Alexander remains popular across much of the world. It appears in birth records in dozens of countries every year. Parents still choose it for reasons that echo the ancient past. They like its strength, its history, its sound. They may shorten it to Alex, a nickname that has become a name in its own right, informal and friendly. Or they may use other diminutives: Sander, Sandy, Lex, Sasha, Sandro, Ale. Each culture and each family finding their own way to make the formal name feel personal and warm. The modern world has created new contexts for ancient names. An Alexander born today might never think about ancient Greece or medieval kingdoms. He might grow up knowing his name primarily as the sound his parents used to call him, the name written on his school notebooks, the name his friends shortened to Alex. Yet he is still connected to that long chain of people, reaching back through the centuries, all carrying variations of the same name, all linked by this one shared element of identity. In hospitals around the world, in maternity wards from Tokyo to Toronto, from Mumbai to Mexico City, babies are born each day who will be named Alexander or one of its variants. The parents making this choice are participating in a tradition they may not fully understand, adding one more link to a chain that extends back thousands of years. They are choosing a name that feels strong, classical, established, a name that has proven its worth across time, that carries a weight of history without feeling outdated. The name has traveled so far from its Greek origins that many who bear it today may never think about where it came from or what it originally meant. To them, Alexander is simply a name, their name, or the name of someone they love. It is the sound their mother called when dinner was ready, the name written on school papers and birthday cards, the name that appears on official documents and is whispered in moments of affection. The ancient meaning, defender of people, may be forgotten, but perhaps it lingers somehow in the character of those who bear the name. Or perhaps it is simply a coincidence, a gentle echo of what the name once promised. In some families, the name is passed down from grandfather to father to son, creating a direct line of Aleksandrs spanning multiple generations. A boy might be Alexander III or fourth in his family, carrying not just the general history of the name, but his own family's specific history with it. He might hear stories about his grandfather Alexander, who fought in a war or built a business or simply lived a quiet, honorable life. The name becomes a bridge between generations, a way of honoring the past while moving into the future. In other families, Alexander is chosen freshly, without any family precedent, simply because the parents like how it sounds or what it represents. These parents might spend months considering names, trying different ones aloud, imagining how they will sound when calling their child, how they will look written down, how the child might feel about the name as they grow. When they settle on Alexander, they are choosing from among thousands of possible names, and their choice adds one more Alexander to the world, one more person to carry this ancient name into a new generation. In Greece today, where the name began, it is still common. Alexandros is given to Greek boys, connecting them directly to their linguistic ancestors from thousands of years ago, when a modern Greek mother calls Aleksandr to her child playing in a park in Athens or Thessaloniki. She is speaking a name that has been spoken in this language continuously for more than 2 millennia. The sounds have barely changed. The meaning is the same. The child does not know that his name is ancient, but he responds to it, and in responding, he becomes part of its story. In modern Greece, the name is so common that many families have multiple members named Alexandros, distinguishing them by adding big or little, or by using different nicknames. A grandfather, father, and son might all be Alexandros, creating a living continuity across 3 generations. The family gatherings become filled with various forms of the name: Alexandros, Aleksandr, Alex, Alekos, each one a variation on the theme, each one carrying the same root meaning but personalized for the individual. Greek families often choose traditional names, seeing them as part of their cultural heritage, a way of maintaining connection to their history and identity. When they choose Alexandros, they are choosing a name that is quintessentially Greek, that speaks of classical civilization, that carries pride in Hellenic culture. The name appears on birth certificates written in Greek letters, is spoken with the particular rhythm and intonation of modern Greek, is celebrated on the feast day of saints named Alexander in the Orthodox calendar. In Russia, Alexander remains one of the most traditional and beloved names. It appears across all social classes, in cities and villages, in every region of that vast country. When shortened to Sasha, it becomes tender and intimate, a name used between close family members and friends. A grandmother might call her grandson Sasha as she feeds him soup in a warm kitchen on a cold winter evening, the name carrying all her love and all the weight of tradition, though she might not consciously think about the Greek origins or the centuries of history embedded in those syllables. Russian naming traditions create a complex web of formal and informal names. And Alexander might be called by his full name in formal settings, by Sasha among family, by Shura by his grandmother, by Alex in international contexts. Each variation represents a different relationship, a different level of intimacy or formality. The name adapts to social context, becoming more or less formal as needed, always maintaining its essential identity while allowing for social nuance. In Russian literature and culture, the name Alexander carries particular resonance. It is the name of Pushkin, the greatest Russian poet. It is the name of countless characters in Russian novels and plays. When Russian parents name their son Alexander, they are connecting him not just to global history, but specifically to Russian cultural tradition, to a name that feels deeply Russian, even though its origins lie in ancient Greece. In English-speaking countries, Alexander has seen various waves of popularity, rising and falling with the fashions of each generation, but never disappearing entirely. It is considered a classic name, one that sounds both traditional and timeless. Parents drawn to it often appreciate that it can be formal when needed, but can also be shortened to friendly nicknames. And Alexander might be Alex to his friends, Xander to his family, and Alexander on his diploma and wedding invitation. The name adapts to different contexts, different relationships, different stages of life. In American culture, Alexander carries associations with founding history. Alexander Hamilton is recognized as one of the founding fathers, his name familiar even to school children learning American history. This gives the name a particular American resonance, connecting it to the nation's origins while maintaining its classical European roots. An American boy named Alexander might grow up hearing about Hamilton, might visit Washington, D.C., and see his name in monuments and museums, might feel a connection to American history through his name. In British culture, Alexander maintains its connection to Scottish heritage through the form Alasdair, while the English form Alexander remains common throughout England, Wales, and Northern Ireland. British families might choose Alexander for its royal associations. It has been borne by Scottish kings, by members of the British royal family in various eras. The name carries a sense of tradition and establishment, of being safely within the mainstream of British naming culture, while still having individual distinction. Across the Arabic-speaking world, Iskandar continues to be used, particularly in regions with historical connections to the Greek and Persian past. It is less common than some purely Arabic names, but it remains part of the naming tradition, a reminder of the cultural exchanges that shaped the Islamic world. When parents name their son Iskandar in Egypt or Lebanon or Jordan, they are reaching back to a time when Greek culture mingled with local traditions, when the name Alexander crossed linguistic boundaries and became part of a new cultural synthesis. In Latin America, Alejandro is widespread, popular in countries from Mexico to Argentina. It is a name that feels thoroughly Spanish, yet it carries within it the entire journey from ancient Greece through Rome, through medieval Spain, and across the Atlantic to the New World. A boy named Alejandro, growing up in a small village in the Andes, or a bustling neighborhood in Buenos Aires, or a coastal town in Venezuela, is connected through his name to an unbroken chain of people, reaching back through the centuries, though he likely thinks of it simply as his name, the sound that means him. the feminine forms of the name have their own quiet stories. Alexandra, the most direct feminine form, is used across many cultures. It means defender of people, just as much as Alexander does. The gender shifted, but the meaning intact. There are also Alessandra, Alexandria, Alejandra, Alexis, each a variation that allows the ancient name to be given to daughters. These forms are newer than the masculine versions, most of them emerging in the last few centuries as naming customs evolved, but they carry the same essential character, the same gentle strength. There is something peaceful in knowing that a name can survive so long, can travel so far, can be spoken by so many people across so many cultures, and still remain recognizably itself. The journey of Alexander is not a story of conquest or drama, despite the famous historical figure who bore it. It is a story of gradual diffusion, of parents in each generation choosing a name they felt was right for their child, of people carrying their names through ordinary lives, of languages adapting a foreign word to fit their own patterns of sound. It is a story of continuity and change, of tradition and adaptation, of something ancient becoming new again with each child born. In quiet moments, in nurseries and bedrooms around the world tonight, there are children named Alexander, or one of its many forms. There are babies being rocked to sleep, their names whispered by tired parents. There are young children drifting off after bedtime stories, their names the last thing they hear before sleep takes them. There are teenagers, adults, elderly people, all carrying this name through their days and nights. Each one is an individual, unique and unrepeatable, yet each one is also connected to all the others through this shared name, this shared sound that has echoed through so many centuries. The name continues to evolve even now. In some places, it is becoming more common. In others, it is giving way to newer fashions, to names that feel more modern or more distinctive. But names have a way of returning, of being rediscovered by new generations who find beauty in traditional choices. A name that seems old-fashioned in one decade may feel fresh and classic in another. The long history of Alexander suggests it will continue to be chosen, continue to be adapted, continue to be carried forward by people who may or may not know its ancient origins, but who feel somehow that it fits. What is it about a name that allows it to endure? Perhaps it is the sound itself, those 4 syllables that flow together so naturally, that can be said quickly or slowly, formally or informally. Perhaps it is the meaning, still resonant even when forgotten. Who would not want their child to be a defender of people, a protector of others? Perhaps it is simply the weight of tradition, the sense that this is a name that has been tested by time, that has proven itself across centuries and cultures. Or perhaps it is something more mysterious, some quality that cannot be easily named, that makes certain combinations of sounds feel right and true and worth preserving. In the end, a name is just a sound, just a word, but it is also more than that. It is identity and history, individual and collective, personal and universal. When someone introduces themselves as Alexander or Alex or Alejandro or Sasha or any of the other forms, they are speaking a word that has been spoken billions of times before by people in ancient Greece and medieval Russia, in Renaissance Italy and modern America. In countless places and countless times, they are adding their voice to a chorus that stretches back through the centuries, a chorus of people saying, this is who I am, and using this particular combination of sounds to say it. And now, as you rest, perhaps you know someone named Alexander. Perhaps it is a friend, a family member, someone you once knew. Perhaps it is you. If you carry this name, you are part of this long, quiet story, connected to all who came before and all who will come after. Your name has traveled from ancient Greece to wherever you are now, transformed by dozens of languages, carried by millions of people, and it has arrived at you in this time, in this place. It is your name, uniquely yours in this moment, yet also shared with countless others across space and time. Or perhaps you know the name only as a word, a name you have heard but never carried yourself. Even so, you are connected to it now through this quiet telling of its story. You have followed its journey from Greek origins through Roman adaptation, through medieval transformation, through global spread. You have learned that it means defender of people, that it has been shaped by dozens of languages, that it continues to be given to children today, just as it was given to children thousands of years ago. This knowledge is a kind of gift, a window into how something as simple as a name can carry so much history and meaning. As we near the end of this gentle story, think about the nature of names themselves. Every person has one, whether common or rare, ancient or modern, simple or complex. Every name has a history, even if it is short, even if it is known only to one family or one culture. Names are how we call to each other across distance, how we identify ourselves and are identified by others, how we connect individual identity to family lineage, how we carry forward the hopes and wishes of those who named us. They are among the first words we learn to recognize, the first aspect of language that feels truly personal and important. The name Alexander, in all its forms, will continue its journey long after this night, long after any of us. Children not yet born will be given this name by parents who may never have heard this particular telling of its story. Those children will grow, will make the name their own, will add their own chapter to its endless narrative. The name will continue to adapt, to change, to be pronounced in new ways by speakers of languages that may not even exist yet. It will persist because people will choose it, will speak it, will respond to it, will make it part of their identity and their family's story. There is comfort in this continuity, in knowing that some things endure across the centuries, even as everything else changes. Languages evolve and sometimes die. Empires rise and fall. Technologies transform the way we live, but names persist, pass from generation to generation, adapted and transformed, but never entirely lost. The name Alexander has survived the fall of the Greek city-states, the Roman Empire, the medieval kingdoms, the rise and fall of countless political systems, and it will likely survive whatever changes the future brings. It will be there in some form, spoken by people in circumstances we cannot imagine, but still recognizably the same name that meant defender of people in ancient Greek all those centuries ago. And so the quiet story of Alexander is both complete and incomplete. Complete in that we have traced its journey from ancient origins to the present day. Incomplete in that the journey continues, will continue, has no definite end as long as people speak and name their children. This is true of all names, of all words, of all aspects of human culture that are passed down through the generations. They are living things, always in motion, always changing, yet always somehow the same. As our quiet story comes to an end, the name we explored tonight continues its gentle journey through the world. Across cities, villages, and distant places, people carry this name into new days and quiet nights. Perhaps someone with this name is resting now, somewhere beneath the same calm night sky. And maybe that name belongs to you. Thank you for listening with Sleepy Facts. If you would like to hear the story of your own name, you are always welcome to leave it in the comments. Perhaps its quiet journey through time will become one of our future stories. Now let your breath slow, let your thoughts drift softly, and allow your mind to settle into peaceful rest. Wishing you a gentle night and quiet dreams.